On this episode of Seahawks Forever, powered by BetUS, it is time for another crossover episode as we look ahead to the Seahawks game in Santa Clara this Sunday against the 49ers, coming out of the bye week, a game that I feel is a must win for the Seahawks if they want to maintain any hope of getting to the postseason, as they have a very difficult stretch coming up against their division and with 5 of their last 8 games on the road. Rob Guerrera of the Gold Standard podcast had me on his show today. He asked me some questions. I got to ask him some questions, trying to identify, is there a vulnerability in this 49er team that Seahawks might be able to exploit? And then specifically, a couple of points. I asked him about cornerback Diamador Lenoir's new contract, how that might serve as a data point for Rick Woolen going into this offseason, and his thoughts on the performance recently of quarterback Brock Purdy. Rob Guerrera, Stats Guerrera, as you know him on Twitter, and I talking 49ers Seahawks next.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
Sign up for a new account today at BetUS, and they'll give you a 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit, 125% on your second and third deposits. That's BetUS. Use the promo code YouTube150. Well, it's always great to talk to Rob, although as I point out in this interview, since we have known each other, I haven't got to talk about a Seahawks win or even a likely win heading into the season. And before we get into this interview, I'm going to say this, because every time Rob and I talk, whether it's on my show or on his, we get comments from Seahawk fans, And I get this really anytime I have somebody on from the other team, but man, he's a homer, man, he's cocky. I love the work that Rob does. And what I would say about those things is, if it helps to know, and he might not want me to tell you this, but Rob is a passionate Seattle Mariner fan. So keep that in mind. We always have a great conversation. Today is no different. Here is Rob Stats Guerrera and I on his podcast, The Gold Standard. Here you go.
What is good, everybody? Welcome to the Crossover Podcast here on the Gold Standard Podcast Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. If you are new to the show, this is where we take a deep dive on the Niners' opponent of the week with someone that covers that team and knows them a hell of a lot better than I do. This week, of course, Seahawks week. That's why I'm sitting here with Dan Viens of the Seahawks Forever Podcast. Dan, welcome back. Had you on earlier. It went well for the Niners, so I had to bring you back.
Yeah, so far our relationship, since we've known each other, has been very one-sided. I'm hoping that changes this Sunday. But that being said, I have no idea what this team is going to do when they show up in Santa Clara. I have no clue. So I don't know. Maybe some people think that makes it fun. It takes a little bit of the pressure off for me. But yeah, let's get it going.
Well, let me ask you this. What is the biggest difference in the Seahawks team from when these two teams played in week 6?
Oh, boy. Well, I think in week 6, we weren't quite sure that the defense was going to struggle as badly as it did between then and now. We could chalk a lot of it up to some guys who were just coming back from injury. We had that Monday night game against Detroit where they were all hurt, and then it took the next 2 or 3 games for them to come back. And we just weren't sure, right? How much of that was just learning a new scheme and new communication, new terminology, and guys getting on the same page. And then that became more evident as the weeks wore on, culminating in that Buffalo Bills game, which was just a debacle defensively. Saw some improvement against the Rams heading into the bye week. And then, some personnel changes again during the bye week. And so we'll see what kind of effect that has. Also, since the last time we saw you, I think the other thing is the offensive line was a concern, but it felt manageable at the time. That 49ers game kind of summed that up, where, Nick Bosa had a ton of pressures, but didn't really get to Geno Smith. He was able to operate the passing game to some extent. They just couldn't run the football, and they couldn't stop the run. We didn't know how bad that was either, but that continued to get worse as the weeks went along. Again, culminating in the game going into the break for the offense anyway against the Rams was one of the worst performances they've had. They gave up almost a 60% pressure rate. So those two things, pretty important things on a football team if you want to have any success. we feel a lot worse about today than we did the first time we played you going into that game on Thursday night.
Okay, so that's interesting. Nick Bosa, just so maybe put your mind at ease, may not play in this game. He was extremely banged up last week. He called it the most painful game he's ever played in his career. And he was asked specifically, are you going to play this week? And he really said, I don't know. It's going to be close. So if he doesn't go, the 49ers will not get any pressure on Geno Smith. Like none. They cannot get pressure. If it's not him, it's nobody for the 49ers. Leonard Floyd has been a complete biscuit since he signed. It is dicey along that defensive line. And that's why I was so surprised. Like, you look at the first game, you mentioned it. The Niners stuffed the run. The Seahawks ran for 52 yards on 20 carries. I'm astonished at that. Do you expect the Seahawks run game to be better this time around?
I don't know if it'll be better, but I think it'll be more balanced. We saw that against the Rams. The thing that drove me crazy about that 49er game is that was the game where they overreacted, where they just didn't try to run the ball enough in that Detroit game. And you know, if you remember a lot of the talk and the narrative from the Seahawks standpoint leading up to that Thursday night game against San Francisco was, you know, got to get Ken Walker more touches, got to run the football more. Macdonald saying Grubb's got to run the football more. And then he pulled a Pete Carroll and came out. And I think if I remember my charting correctly, 4 of the first 5 possessions for the Seahawks in that game, they went run, pass, run on first down, run on second down, pass on third down. Not a great recipe for success against any team, let alone a good defense like San Francisco's. And so there was an overreaction there. And then when that didn't work, when it was just running into a brick wall, that you just abandoned the running game in the second half and just came out throwing it. I think we saw it against the Rams, even though they weren't effective running the football, only about 60 rushing yards. They stuck with it. It was more consistent. The Rams had to honor it, and it allowed them to do some other things off of it. So I think you'll see that. You know, the real question is just the performance of that offensive line. Is Ken Walker going to have any room to operate? Is he going to have any running lanes? We'll see. I think we're going to get Abe Lucas back. I think everything sounds positive that he's going to start on Sunday. What version of him we're going to get, I don't know, but it can't be worse than what we've been running out there at right tackle to this point.
Yeah, Geno threw 52 times in that first game. That is not the recipe for success for any team, really, unless you've got a very select few people at quarterback. On the flip side, the Niners destroyed the Seahawks on the ground. 33 carries for 228 yards in the game. And oh, by the way, Christian McCaffrey is back now. How are you feeling about stopping the 49ers run game?
I don't know that you can ever look forward to stopping the run game when you play them with a healthy Christian McCaffrey. You can only hope to contain them, as the old adage would go, right? But I feel a lot better about their chances given the performance we saw against the Rams. The run fits were so much better, dramatically better in that game against a good running football team with a running back that came in as hot as anyone into that game, and really completely shut Kyron Williams. So the fits were a lot better, much better. And then they make the move at linebacker this week and release Terrell Dodson, and he was one of the guys still starting on that team that really struggled in that area, just instinctively just getting into the right gap and even then making the tackle. He's really struggling to tackle. And so whether that's going to be addition by subtraction, we don't know, because we're starting a rookie in his place, and that always comes with its red flags. But they were just so much more disciplined, and the communication was better against the Rams. I think they're going to be in a much better position, because that 49ers game, right? That was the game where we had, clips on tape of 3 players going to the same gap at times.
Jeez.
The tackling, Jerome Baker, Jerome Baker was still starting an inside linebacker then. He was still on the team. That was pre-trade for Ernest Jones. And those 2 guys in particular, and Rayshon Jenkins, just absolutely struggled. Jenkins was playing hurt in that game, ends up going on IR the next week. But it's a little bit different looking defense than it was then, both personnel-wise, and I think they're going to execute a little bit better.
What is the level of confidence in Mike Macdonald? Is this like, hey, it's his first year, he's still putting it together and we see signs and we're good? Or is it like, I don't know what this guy's exactly building here?
it felt like that was the narrative, with losing 5 out of 6 and 4 straight at home, that some fans were like, and there's people behind me at the stadium that are, we should have kept Pete. I hear it every game. I saw a poll the other day, though, a pretty big poll on Twitter with a lot of respondents, and it was a little bit more in favor of Macdonald than I kind of thought, given the losing streak. It was about 75% to 25% that still felt confident in him. Personally, I think he is a legitimate football brain, and I think he's wired for this job, and I think he's figuring it out a little bit more as he goes along. I do think he was overwhelmed a little bit by everything that goes along with being a first-time head coach. Dealing with the media 3 times a week. He's never had to do that before. I think he's getting more comfortable there. I do think it's going to take an off season of that coaching staff and front office being able to align from day one and being involved in all the processes together. That new coaching staff was getting to know each other. It was put together so late in the process, and they had never worked together. The only 2 coaches on that staff that have ever even known each other were Jay Harbaugh, the special teams coach, and Mike Macdonald. And so I think we're going to get a much better idea next year of whether John Schneider and Mike Macdonald can align on what this team needs and what Macdonald needs personnel wise to be able to play the style of play he wants to play. But I think I have a tremendous amount of confidence in him. I think he's the right guy. He just doesn't quite have the right horses. And it's pretty hard for anyone to come in here and win. You could bring Vince Lombardi back, and I don't know if he can win with that offensive line the way it's currently constructed.
What do you think of the division as a whole? Are we getting back to like the rough and tumble NFC West? I mean, Arizona's obviously leading. 49ers have had a lot of success in recent years. The Rams obviously won a Super Bowl a couple years ago and are no pushovers. And now you're telling me if you think Seattle can build this thing, like, are we just in for dogfights in this division for the next 3, 4, 5 years?
I think so. And I'm assuming that the Seahawks are going to improve that offensive line this offseason, and because I think they're close. I think if they fix that and give their quarterback a better chance, whoever that quarterback ends up being over the next 3 to 5 years, that they'll be in that. But Arizona's the team that I think really tilts it in favor of an overwhelming yes to your question, that they're better than I thought they were going to be. I thought they had 2 very good foundational drafts, the kind of drafts they needed to have, but I didn't necessarily think there was any wow in those drafts, any blue chip players. And I thought they'd really struggle on defense this year, but the way they've come together and that Drew Petzig offense, and I think we're seeing a little bit of a different Kyler Murray since the injury. Yep. Never been a huge Kyler Murray guy, but he's impressing me every week. That team's pretty legitimate. And then as long as, Les Snead and Sean McVay are running things in LA and John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are in San Francisco, they're going to figure out a way, because it's not just about the blue chip players there. It's about how they draft. And you see the infusion of young talent on both those teams, especially in the middle rounds lately. And they're not going anywhere. So yeah, I think this division could be setting itself up to where it'll be one of the more interesting competitive divisions moving forward. This episode brought to you by BetterHelp. If you've ever considered therapy, give BetterHelp a try. This month is all about gratitude. Thanksgiving right around the corner. We spend time with family and friends. And as we get closer to New Year's, we tend to look back over the last year and take stock of where we are. How are things going for you? Do you need to learn some better coping skills? Is there something stressing you out? Do certain aspects of your life feel out of control? I know I feel that way at times, and it helps to turn outward and talk to somebody. And the great thing about BetterHelp is you can do it on your schedule, on your time, from the comfort of your own home. It is entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire over at BetterHelp.com. They'll match you with a licensed therapist. If you don't think that is a great match, you can request another one and move on to another therapist at no additional cost. And right now, if you watch this program and you want to take advantage of this, maybe talk to somebody, head on over to BetterHelp.com/forever, and they will give you 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/forever. And a big thank you to the folks at Doer for sponsoring the program. Doer is built for doing. That's DUER, with styles of stretch performance denim and lifestyle apparel for everyone in every season. I have a pair of their jeans and 2 of their flannel shirts. It's some of the most comfortable clothing that I own. I wear the jeans every day. There is 20% stretch incorporated in these jeans. They're incredibly comfortable. It's my go-to pant for Seahawks games. I am not kidding. They're versatile. They're comfortable enough to wear every day. They're antibacterial, meaning less washing. And they're made of temperature-regulating fabrics for moisture management. They're also made out of sustainable fabrics in a sustainable way. And right now, my listeners get 20% off your first purchase when you use this exclusive URL, shopdoer.com/forever. That's shopdoer, DUER.com/forever for 20% off your first purchase.
All right. What do you got for me? What questions can I help you answer? How can I make you feel worse about this game?
Oh, it's hard to find a crack. Like, you look at the record overall, you're like, how'd they lose that many games? And I know there's been key injuries, right? It's pretty hard to replace blue chip players, especially one that's so vital to what they do on offense there. But like, it just, sometimes a team, it doesn't seem to play up to the sum of its parts, right? For whatever reason, it's hard to put a thumb on or a finger on. What is it? What is this team? Feels like they're close, but then I expected them to play much better against Tampa Bay last week with Christian back, right? I didn't think that game was going to go down to the buzzer. What's the one thing holding this team back from being the team that most expected them to be?
Special teams. They are awful on special teams. And I'm not saying like, oh, they're, bad. They're like the worst maybe I've ever seen in my entire life. It's every week, and it's always a new thing, right? One week it was the Rams getting a fake punt on them and giving up a first down there. Muffed punt last week against Tampa Bay. We saw Darrell Luter, same guy that got in the way of the punt in the Super Bowl, did the exact same thing, fumbled a punt, set the Buccaneers up for a touchdown, got them right back in the game. Against Seattle the first time, right? The kickoff return we saw. It's like special teams roulette. Like, how can they screw it up this week to make a massive play to get the other team back in the game? Every single week it happens. It is crippling to this team. And it's really the weakest part of the team, to be honest with you. The offense and the defense is okay, but the special teams is so bad that it makes up for it, so to speak.
It's an interesting answer. I know early in the season there was some concern about the defense and about the new coordinators and how those two were working together, assuming that Brandon Staley is a coordinator as well. Sounds like he kind of is there, right? When you look for a weakness, looking at PFF grades and DVOA, you talked about issues on the defensive line. I know going into the last game, I had hoped we could run the ball better against them because they weren't great against the run. Even now, I think PFF has them squarely in the middle. I think they're 15th or 16th against the run, but their coverage grade is number 1 in the NFL. And Demondre Lenore got the big deal this week, which is interesting to us here in Seattle because Reek Woolen's going to be eligible for an extension this offseason. Some people feel like that might be a data point. I was surprised that happened during the season and it happened earlier than it needed to. Were you?
Oh, stunned, because the 49ers, most of the time, almost all of the time, wait till August and September to do deals. And it's infuriating, right? We saw it with Trent Williams. We saw it with Deebo Samuel. We saw it with Brandon Ayuk. Like, it was constant. And it was so frustrating because it's like, these guys are good. Pay them their money. And then out of the blue, we get this news this week about Deommodore Lenore. And it's great. He's the 12th highest paid corner, even with the new deal. That deal is going to age like wine because new guys are going to get signed and he's just going to get further and further down that list. He is having an all-pro season right now. That's how good he has played for this team. So to lock him up at 25 years old for the next 5 years, home run by the 49ers. I was stunned.
Where are you on Brock Purdy these days? I know you're hard on him more so than some other people that I see that cover the 49ers. You praise him when he deserves to be praised, but you're not afraid to be hard on him either. Where do you stand on him as he enters into, I think this is the offseason he's eligible, right? He could sign an extension this coming offseason. Yeah. Where are you at with that?
Yeah, it's weird, right? So last week he threw for 352 yards and 2 touchdowns and no picks. And after the game, I was like, yeah, Brock was not that great. And people were getting on me like, what are you talking about? He threw for 350 yards and 2 touchdowns. And there are a lot of games where he comes out and he's off early. And like off is like just throwing high, just not being crisp with some of his throws and some of his decision making. And sometimes it just takes him a little while to get into it. And it's like, this team is not good enough to play with its food like that. Like, you got to come out and be on it, And look, luckily last week in the fourth quarter, he was awesome. He was fantastic in the fourth quarter, had a beautiful play to George Kittle, a touchdown pass where he scrambled around for 8.5 seconds before throwing a dot in the back of the end zone. Obviously, he led the final field goal drive with 41 seconds left and 1 timeout, took him right down the field. I don't think the ball hit the ground at all, and they got the game-winning field goal. So he turned it on when his best was needed. But there are a lot of games where it's, a tale of 2 halves, or he's just not quite the same on-target, on-time guy that we saw in 2023. So I think there are still some questions to be answered with Brock. I know 49er fans hate to see that, but it wouldn't shock me if he threw 2 picks against the Seahawks, and it wouldn't shock me if he threw no picks against the Seahawks. And by the way, every time he's thrown at least 2 interceptions, the 49ers have lost.
It's interesting you say that he gets off to poor starts, because I look back at the last few years, at least since the last time the Seahawks won in this series in December of 21, I think. And especially the last 5 games, like the Seahawks seem like they kick the ball off and then they're down 10-0. Like they get off to these terrible starts in this series and have to dig their way out of it. Off the top of my head, the one game that I feel like they got off to their best start in the last 5 is the one that Drew Lock started down there. I remember the touchdown pass to DK early and the nice drive there. And it seemed like, okay, we got a chance, but my goodness, we seem to dig ourselves holes against this team.
He has played well against the Seahawks in his career. Brock has. Even the first game he played in Seattle was a Thursday night game. He had broken ribs in that game, and he came out and still played well. Remember, that was the game where he did like the double fake screen, throw to Kittle over the middle.
The one that everyone has copied since then. Yeah.
And actually, Seattle, you guys did it to us. The next time we played, you used it for a touch. It's a great play.
I've seen a couple other teams do it too. And every time it happens, someone will post it and go, "This is the greatest play call I've ever seen." And then everyone else in the comments jumps in and says, "Yeah, we've seen that before."
Yeah, right. We did that. Brock is 4-0 against Seattle, almost a 70% completion rate, 8 touchdowns to just 2 interceptions. He has played well against you guys. And God, we need it. Like, the 49ers are in desperation mode. They cannot lose this game. That's the urgency you're going to see with the 49ers. The reason they had to fight on the sidelines last week after the 3rd missed field goal is because they know they can't screw around. They have burned through their margin for error. I have targeted 3 games left on their schedule that are must-win. This game is a must-win game. The Miami game is a must-win game. And the Bears game is a must-win game. Because the other 5 games are incredibly difficult. We're talking Detroit. We're talking Buffalo in Buffalo. We're talking Green Bay in Green Bay. They've got another game against the Rams. And there's one more game that I can't think of now off the top of my head, but it's a difficult game for the Niners. So they have to beat the Seahawks. So you're going to get a desperate 49ers team this week.
Well, I hope you get a desperate Seahawk team and a refreshed one coming off a bye, because and I think we might already be there anyway. Like, I've shifted my expectations a little bit over the last few weeks and what I'm focusing on. But if they lose this game Sunday, I think you can just stop talking about the playoffs, even as a possibility, especially they play 5 of their last 8 on the road. They've had a real favorable schedule when it comes to home and away so far, and they've squandered that. They've lost 4 straight at Lumen Field. That's kind of unheard of. So, yeah, if it doesn't go well Sunday, I think the narrative completely changes for most of the fan base that are still clinging to it, some hope that they can make the playoffs. For me personally, I think, the one thing that I'd love to see, because we don't know what the future is going to be here at the quarterback position. Like, you can throw a rock in any direction and find, legitimate reporting or speculation from both extreme ends of the spectrum, right? That they're going to move on completely and spend that money elsewhere and go younger at the position. Or Mike Holmgren just said yesterday on local radio, he thinks they're going to extend him and give him a new contract and keep him around longer.
I mean, yes, please do that from my perspective.
Yeah, because he's never beaten the 49ers. And as well as he's played and as bullish as I am on his game, it's he hasn't played well against the 49ers. A couple of the games, I think he's played better than the perception has been, but the bottom line is he hasn't beat this team or really even come close to it. So, this may be the last time as a Seahawk that he plays the 49ers. That's a realistic possibility. It'd be nice to see him get one because the dude works hard. I love his story. I love what he's come back from and what he, how he's persevered, but that's been the thorn in his side for sure.
Final prediction on Sunday, who wins?
See, this is why I don't bet on sports, right? Because the more I convince myself we don't have a shot, the better chance that we probably have. As I said at the beginning, I have absolutely no expectations. I don't know what this team is going to look like on Sunday. But if they play defense the way they did against the Rams, disciplined defense, assignment sound defense, and tackle better, and somehow, some way, coming out of the break, right? Coming out of the bye with all of the self-scouting and evaluation that's being done, it sounds like we might see more under center, more play action game. And if Abe Lucas is back on Sunday and he's even 80% of what he was as a rookie, I was watching some tape yesterday of his first game ever as a pro, which was that Denver game after the Russell Wilson trade, right? That season opener. And then I watched some tape from his last game last year before he was put on IR, and he was clearly not healthy then. And even last year's version of Abe Lucas hobbling around on one leg is better than what we've been running out there. So anything closer to a healthy Abe Lucas pretty dramatically improves that offensive line. And if you can give Geno a chance and there's some semblance of a running game, I think they can compete. They just have to. This is where the difference in the overall talent of the rosters is, right? The margin for error is just so much thinner. The Seahawks have to play probably 90% of their best to even have a shot to win on Sunday. So you want a prediction, let's say, just because it'll make for more interesting comments and it'll score me some points with my viewers. Let's say coming out of the bye, the Seahawks find some answers and they win. For them to win, it would have to be kind of an ugly game, I think. Let's say 17-13.
Let me just tell you, if the 49ers only score 13 points in this game, there will be open revolt in San Francisco. That would be terrifying.
Yes.
Let's hope that doesn't happen from my perspective. But this is why you need to check out Dan's work with the Seahawks Forever podcast and YouTube channel. The most objective analysis on his team. Dan, I thank you so much for the time. Tell people what they get if they subscribe to your channel.
You get me and thank you so much for pointing that out. That's, my old journalistic background. That's my aim. Every time that I hit record is to be thoughtful and objective. It's easier sometimes than others. That's why I've stopped doing immediate reactions after home games because I'm usually a little fired up and things look different in the stadium than they do when you get a chance to kind of zoom out and take a look at everything statistically. So at Seahawks Forever on Twitter and Blue Sky, and Seahawks Forever on YouTube.
Thank you, sir. We'll talk to you. This is it. I guess I'll talk to you next year.
Yeah, because I don't think we're going to see each other in the playoffs. So good luck the rest of the way, and go Mariners. Well, how are you guys feeling going into this game? Coming out of a bye, the Seahawks with a chance to reset. We're going to have a new linebacker duo with Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight and a little bit of Drake Thomas sprinkled in for the first time. Do you think that's an upgrade? How about Abe Lucas coming back? Give me your predictions. You know what? Let's do that this week. Throw your score predictions down in the comments, how you think this game is going to go. Because I meant it when I said it. I think if they lose this game, we stop talking about the playoffs and we start focusing on more of the development of the roster and the young players on it and just start to zoom out and look for evidence that we're building something to hold on to a playoff chance. I think they have to win on Sunday one way or another. And you've heard me say it before. It's not always the best team that wins on Sunday. I'm certainly not the first to say that, but it's who plays the best, right? The NFL is a bell curve. At one end, you have a very small number of teams that are terrible, that really have little chance to win every week. And at the other end, you have a very small amount of teams that can go out every single week and win even if they don't play their best. In the middle, the big bell are all the other teams, and the Seahawks is certainly one of them that has to play well. Their margin for error is less. If they go out and they're sharp on Sunday, they have a chance, right? We've seen the pieces. at different points of the season. We just haven't seen a complete game. We haven't seen it all come together. There would be no better time for that to happen than this week. If you haven't checked out my other episodes this week, great conversation with Max Brown about the upcoming quarterback class and also quarterback development and his experience as a college football quarterback and analyst. And then Rob Staten walks through his horizontal draft board, his first one of the season with me, talks about some specific needs of the Seahawks and how they match up or don't with the draft board, and some specific prospects that he thinks are good fits. Check those out as well. In the meantime, follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Seahawks Forever. Shout out to BetUS for sponsoring this program. Thanks to the Blue Wire Network. Thanks to all of you for watching. We'll be back. I might be cooking up another bonus show tomorrow, but I'm not going to tell you what it is because no promises. It's going to take some work. But at the very latest, we'll see each other after the 49er game when I will react live to the outcome of that one. Until then, this is Seahawks Forever. I'm Dan. Thanks for watching.